It is 10:30 now. So let us start the first session. And the first speaker is Sri Shivashankar Babu. He will be talking on factors influencing sculptural syncretism based on historical progression so far. Let me introduce Sri Shivashankar Babu. Sri Shivashankar Babu is a heritage enthusiast in architecture, iconography, epigraphy, and art history. He analyzes the heritage-related concepts and puzzles and experiments with presentation of them in a simple way, easy to understand for the beginners. He intends to spread the heritage awareness to the next generation. He is part of Tamil Heritage Trust in Chennai and several regional heritage groups of Tamil Nadu. He actively supports tools, seminars, and guidebook initiatives to promote heritage. He runs a social media infrastructure handle Babu for Heritage and YouTube channel with curated heritage videos and Telegram event bulletin. That I welcome or invite rather Sri Shivashankar Babu to make his presentation. Sri Shivashankar Babu.
Yeah, give me a minute. Good morning, all. Am I audible and are you able to see my image? Hello? Am I audible? Okay. So, good morning and a pleasant start to a session on syncretism, an interesting subject, and with the galaxy of speakers. So before we go into the talk, let me thank Ms. Preeta Nair for giving me an opportunity to talk in this international webinar and also give a chance to expose myself to the syncretism and its concepts and a lot of other detailed areas. This is interesting in terms of being able to analyze in multiple aspects the impact of syncretism and what causes it. And thanks to Ajit Kumar and Vice Chancellor Ajay Kumar and Chitra Banu for giving an illuminating talk and a lot of academic and other details on the syncretism, how it has happened from rock age to the rock age now, and making my job easier or making many of the slides or the concepts or which I was planning to talk, they have become redundant. They have been already covered in detail. Thanks for setting up and then giving a fairly detailed talk into this. So let me go into the presentation now. This is going to be around, let us say, around 45 to 1 hour kind of an discussion. And at the end, if we have time, we can have quick questions, or we can always share the questions to the group and we'll be able to answer it offline. Cool. So, are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Can somebody answer, please?
It is visible, sir.
I won't be able to see the chat. So, okay, cool. So, today's subject, what we are going to talk for the next 1 hour, is on factors influencing syncretism in sculptures. And so, the objective of this is to analyze and give an overview of syncretism as well as sculptures. To set the context, we presume that the audience which we are targeting knows English and the basics of Indian religions and some amount of history of India and history of, so that no, we don't go into details. Why we are doing this talk as an introductory talk is primarily a way of level setting. I am sure that in this audience, there are scholars, there are professors, there are people who have been doing enough research, and also a fairly good amount of freshers. The objective of this kind of webinars is to bring the common people with the basic knowledge or no knowledge to come up and then observe this concept and push them to know more about these concepts and explore and get into appreciating our heritage. So with this subject, the inaugural session focuses on explaining what is syncretism, what are the basic religions which we are going to target, and some concepts on sculptures. And finally, the factors which are impacting syncretism in general, and some examples. Most of the talk is going to be visual and with the minimal data content. Since it is going to be introductory, I am not going very deep into any of these concepts. Otherwise, this will become a seminar by itself. So primarily, I am touching up the ground level to ensure that all the participants who are attending this have the basic fundamental knowledge on the above. So they'll be able to know what syncretism is and the basic concepts of religion and how it is affecting syncretism in religion, how the religions have transformed over a period, absorbing new concepts and other things, and what is its impact on sculptures. Whenever there is a new concept, new absorption, so the design of sculptures, the pose, the attributes changes. In addition, there are other influencing factors. Let us see what are the other influencing factors which impacts the sculptures. And with this, you'll be having the fundamentals clear, and it will help the next 26 speakers to talk directly into their own area of a specialized subject directly without explaining what is syncretism, basics of religion, and concepts of sculpture. So it is a level setter or a foundation, so that it is everybody is at the same level, and you build edifices, towers, and temples on top of it in the next 26 stars. So that is what you should be able to do at the end of this 1 hour. If you are interested, you can take further reading on this subject. You can study the following books: Iconography, the reference book by Gopinath Rao, or Buddhist one, T. Donaldson on the iconography, and the progression of religion, syncretism, Professor Dr. Neelakanta Shastri's phenomenal book on development of religion in South India, and Bapet BP book on 2,500 years of Buddhism. So these kind of books will also excite your interest and explore a little more into this subject. And before we begin the talk, I would like to thank the following for the research work or content which I'm going to show you. First of all, Google Endeavor is the ultimate. Whatever we ask, he gives immediately. And I'm relaying this for the most of the images and basic content and the reference material. He has got a good lieutenant, Wikipedia Pujari. So gives nicely, you talk about any subject, it gives a content. More than the content, which may not be validated, the references and the journals which he gives enormous amount of quick analysis and research and say and validate whatever is in Wikipedia, and we take our own inferences on Wikipedia. And I also want to thank my parent organization, Tamil Heritage Trust, with whom I have been associated for the past 6 years, and I have benefited immensely. And many of this information or the knowledge is through attending the site seminars and Pecha Kacheris and help in preparing the guidebooks. We tend to understand a lot of things, and we tend to familiarize on how to present things in a different way. So thanks to all for that. Now, let us go into the basics. The subject is factors influencing syncretism in religious cultures. First, let us understand what is syncretism, its etymology, usage, and how it is changed over a period of time, and what is the current context. It starts from Greek, the original meaning. In Greek, it meant syncretismo, the federation of Cretan cities. It is from sync together and Cretans. Crete is a very large island just outside Greece, and which is one of the dominant islands. The story or the popular thing is that there are many cities in that, and then there is frequent fight between the cities, and then they are constantly at war. But when an external invasion happens, they forget their differences and then pull together and fight the common enemy. So this has not changed since ages. And the latest form of this syncretism is the current assembly elections, which is happening now. You would have seen syncretism in many forms. So many political parties joining together and forming fronts and then fighting each other. So this is the original meaning of syncretism. Forget everything and forget the past, and then unite to have a common benefit or common enemy. So there is the initial thing based on one part of the etymology. And this term is used as a noun by Erasmus in his Adagia, where he defines syncretism. And this is a list of proverbs which were being used in the time. There is a fairly extensive collection of proverbs that is available there. So this is how syncretism was originally meant. Later on, we came to an alternate definition where the other way of looking at syncretism is with the sun and chronomy, where we say we mix and then take the best benefit, combining different beliefs and then blending different practices, get the best out of the breed and then bring it up. If it is good, you take it. Definitely in many situations, it doesn't happen in a positive way. Sometimes it happens in a negative way also. So around 19th century, this become more popular in terms of the term become more popular and being used in a different connotation. combination of different forms of belief and practice, fusion of one or two originally disparate or different intellectual forms. This usage of syncretism is being regularly applied in religious, political, and linguistic context. And what we are going to see now is the next step of religious syncretism and see how the religions have evolved over a period. So this is an absorbing concepts, beliefs, external to the score to expand our survey. So it can be just to expand where we absorb and then say that, yes, I am also part of your group. Or when an external religion invades, so you also adapt and then say that our religion serves both modes is possible. So let us see, there are basically three types of religious syncretism possible. There might be other variations, but I'm trying to put things in a fairly simple way. First, you are forcing your beliefs or concepts on an occupied or oppressed religion, and then they adapt to survive. Typically, during the Hellenistic period, that is after Alexander the Great and afterwards the Roman Empire. So they enforce their concept of Greek gods into many of the occupied things. So wherever Egypt, wherever in other countries, so the local gods are always mapped to Greek, and then there was a uniform concept of worship according to the Greek and then Greek equivalent, so that they were able to unify all regions and then enforce that it is adopted. So this is one way of syncretism. The other can be voluntary incorporation of beliefs from an unrelated tradition or a religion for a benefit. If you see something good or something that is beneficial and you take it. So the earlier concept of Isis in Egypt and other things, many of the concepts, and then this one, so gets gradually transformed into Virgin Mary and then Holy Trinity. Like that, we can quote so many examples. The same way the Greek gods and then many of this gets transformed into other religions. And Jaina and Buddha religions, and they also absorbed and then coexisted in India by absorbing many of the Hindu religions and customs as well as gods. So this is another aspects of religious syncretism. The third variant is the best of the breed, where a totally new religious sector or an order comes in, which takes the best from multiple religious orders, the concepts, and then come up with a totally new scheme. So this has been the boiling cauldron of coming up with new religions, new sects and other things. This is one of the popular way of expansion. Yeah, a more easy and visible relevances is a 16th century Deen Ilahi found by Akbar, which is agnostic religion, where it doesn't have any grantha or any ideal or other thing. And he has taken some of the best concepts from Hinduism and Islam and brought it up. The other major one is the Sikhism, taking best of the practices from Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, and all these things, and then coming up with a religion which is now the 5th or 6th largest religion in the world, and has grown in a fairly big way. So these are the three combinations that are possible, where you blend concepts from one religion. And then why we are discussing this in detail is that all our sculptures and changes flow from the changes in fundamental concepts of syncretism. An example is in the Agra. Typically, in a typical Muslim, so animal and other representation are normally typically not allowed. But when you are transforming to Deen Ilahi, when you see in Agra, there are animal motifs and other things which are also prevalent in a Muslim-like culture. So this is where the syncretism comes in, and then its impact on religion. Now, having seen syncretism and understand what syncretism is, and then what is the religious syncretism, to understand how this has been progressing over a period of time, let us see some of the Indian religions and how they have progressed through the past 2,500 years. So we are focusing on the three major ones: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Primarily, this is where it has expanded beyond the Indian continent, while the Hinduism has not been aggressively professed, and then Jainism mostly retained in India. The Buddhism has spread all over Southeast Asia, actively spread by professing and then conversion, whereas the Hinduism has progressed primarily due to trade and other propagations. So let us say, let us see what is the Hindu religious path. So when you talk about the Hindu way of, so before Vedic times and other things, people are worshipping nature and weapons. And during Vedic times, the focus was primarily mantras and yajnas. And there were gods: Agni, Indra, Varuna, Surya, Prithvi, Pusan, Vishnu, Rudra. And you see that Rudra and Vishnu come very last. They are not the primary gods. And these gods are visualized, and they give yajnas and pujas, and Agni takes them and then gives them to all the gods, and then they give the blessing, and the people get the benefit of bounty in harvest and rains and other things. So it is a give and take kind of policy. Parallelly, in Tamil Nadu, in other areas during Sangam period, they had their own set of different gods. Primarily, they were split into 5 types of lands. Uh, Three natural lands: hills, coastal areas, and forests, where for hill areas, Muruga was a god, and then for forest, Vishnu was a god, and for coastal areas, Varuna was the god. So this is the cultivated land, which is plains, where Indra, the rain god, is the primary deity. And when it is not cultivated and when it comes into desert, Kotravai, desert area, Kotravai is the god. So this is the primary deities that were prevalent during this. We are seeing this in the context saying that the idols, farmers, how they are transforming from one period to other in terms of changing concepts or changing beliefs. Later come the Itihasa and Purana period, where a lot of the primary Itihasas are written. And initially it started with the Panchayatana concept as a Smarta concept, where you have a set of 5 primary gods, and then you do puja at home, you do puja at temple, and most of the temples were having any one of the 5 as a primary god, with the other 4 as a secondary god around it. So Saivism, Vishnuism, Sakti, Ganapati, and Surya were the initial gang. And later on, this expanded with all these groups had their own Puranas, their proceed on this. And with this concept, the Kshanmada concept of Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Sakta having their own set started. Later on, there was an integration of these sects somewhere at a later period, and coming into a common Hindu Sanatana Dharma or religious concept, where all the sects were united for a common worship. So this led to a lot of new iconography and sculptures like Somaskanda, Harihara, Artanariswara, and some of the idols getting changed in terms of character, from a aggressive character to a benign character, or from the relationship change. And later on, during 10th, 14th, Shaiva and Vaishnava went into a grand expansion, and Bhakti Marga movement was there. And it triggered its own new Puranas, Saiva Puranas giving salvation to Vishnu, and then Vishnu Puranas giving salvation to Saiva. And it created its own set of new iconography. And finally, during the 17th century, in religious renaissance, we come up with the different concepts of Viranjaneya, Ugra Narasimha, or Kali, or Bhairava, which are ferocious, primarily to create the warlike kind of a structure that was prevalent to protest against attackers. This is primarily a Vijayanagara concept. So if you see this, from the last 2,500 years, the priority of gods, the sequence of gods have changed. Some of the gods have come, some of the gods have been relegated, and Agni, Indra, who were the primary gods, were relegated to Navagrahas. Like that, the sequence have changed. So during the Bhakti period, the Itihasa, Ramayana, and other Puranas were created. A lot of Puranas are created. Shiva Purana, Shiva, 64 forms of Shiva, Trivandadal Purana, the place and events by Shiva. This is prevalent in Madurai and southern area. And the Nine Mars's story, and Bhagavad Purana relating to Krishna Leela, killing of demons, and avatars of Vishnu. So all this related to all this relates to a totally different kind of a thing. So it led to an explosion of new icons and images. I'm sorry, I disconnected. Is the screen visible now? Hello?
Yes, sir, it is still visible.
Is the screen visible now? Okay.
Hello, it is
So going
visible,
to the
sir.
next slide. So, having seen Hinduism, let us go to the next Buddhist religious progression. Buddhists have three major forms. One is the initial form, Theravada, which is predominantly the initial one between 5th BCE to 1 CE, and it is focused on nirvana for monks, and it is traditional one relating to teachings of Buddha. So it is prevalent in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand belt, Cambodia belt. The key focus there is there is no symbolic worship of Buddha. One moment. Buddha as a image is not available at the time. So predominantly the icons that are worshipped during the period is Bodhi tree, Vajrasana, and Dharmachakra. Later on, Mahayana started professing nirvana for all beings, And Buddha is considered as one of the many Buddhas and a man. And this concept was more comfortable and it spread it to China, Japan, Korea, and Singapore. And the advantage of this is that you can pray for yourself and you can pray for the family and you can pray for benefit of others. So it leads to a lot of new iconography, various forms of Buddha, various forms, various avatars. Later on, Vajrayana went into far more detailed analysis, which is available as a tantric form in Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan, and with the mandala concept. So it leads to many more gods, many more Buddhas and godlings, and a hierarchy of many new icons observed from the local region. So this gives a simple chart of the various Dhyana Buddhas that were professed with their own mudras and then directions. And later on, they developed concepts. And then later on, there is a concept of Dhyana Bodhisattva, who is not a Buddha, but it has to go through many lives, many births, and finally attains to achieve nirvana by becoming a Buddha. So this concept has got, so primarily, Bodhisattva is linked to Dhyani Buddha, and which we can identify by the crown, where you will be normally having a symbol, a mudra, or this one, the symbol or mudra or the actual image of the Buddha in the crown part. So so this is leading to a state of iconography and sculptures with various facts and then mudras and then various new forms. And on top of it, you also have mandalas. Mandalas is a collection of Dhyani Buddha and both and a series of bodhisattvas and consort around it in a particular sequence, and different mandalas are profound to be giving different effects. So this is how the Buddha iconography and the sculptures expanded and then made into a fairly complex subject by itself. Now, let us see the third component, Jaina. Jaina religion is almost the same time around Buddha, and it starts with Adinatha, and in the current Yuga, we have 24 Tirthankaras. Out of the 24 Tirthankaras, so there is again iconographical definitions. Initially, the Tirthankaras were there. Later on, they had concerts, and then they had Exadevas. So the major iconography is prevalent for this the initial Adinatha and the last three, Neminatha, Parshvanatha, and the final Mahavira. So most of the sculptures we find and iconography is related to these three. And later on, it had its own addition of Shashan Devatas or protection Devatas or who are devotees of the Tirthankara, and then or who were interacting with the Tirthankara, and later on they also started getting worshipped. So you have a collection of yakshas and yakshis, female and male, and then we have vahanas for them, and then now we even have Navagragas there. And this is how the Jaina religion as well as the iconography started expanding. So some of the popular yakshis are Chandrasara Devi for Adinatha and Ambika with a mango as a yakshi of Neminatha, and Padmavati for Parshvanatha. Padmavati with fertility and other childs. And there are some yakshas like Kantakarna Veera and then Nakota Bhairava and Bhumyoji, which is primarily a pyramid or a pyramidical kind of worship. So this is how the Jaina also progressed in a very, very simple way across the time, and then it absorbed more iconography from various religions like Hindu, and then it also gets settled and it was running. So when we talk about syncretism, so far we have covered and we know now what is syncretism and how the religions have progressed and what are the various changes and other things. When you talk about syncretism, we cannot forget and it is not complete if you don't talk about Ganesha. He is the ultimate syncretist and then he has done it. So before we go into the next section, the factors affecting syncretism, I would like to have a brief about Ganesha. Having analyzed and then seen the schedule, I don't see anything about Ganesha. Ultimately, this is the ultimate god who has been syncretist all along. And I wanted to have a brief cover around 5-10 minutes on Ganesha. So you can see Ganesha can be in any form or it can absorb all gods and then it can be progressed in many things. It started with 1200 BCE where we found Ganesha like forms in anthropomorphic elephant figures. And some images are also found in Indus Valley with elephant-like forms. And then later on, primarily why it has become so popular is it was also for many of the traders, it has been the primary deity. And this is how Ganesha has traversed the entire Asia and it is available and he is omnipresent in Asia. And Ganesha in one form or other is there in most of the Southeast Asian religions. So getting mentioned from Rig Veda where it talks about Ganapati, we don't know whether it is referring to the actual form of Ganapati or it is a title. But by 5th century, you have a fairly stable form of Ganapati, like how we are seeing it appearing. And then from there, it is only the external appearance or the number of weapons or whether it is standing or sitting, that aspects gets changed. So it has been getting mentioned from ages. And later on, it became a separate sect, Ganapatiyam, with its own full kit of Purana and then its puja and other methods. So by 9th century, it has become one of the Panchayat gods. An interesting thing happened in 19th century in India, where Indians were fighting British. There were ban after Sipahi revolution, and Tilak popularized Ganesh Utsav as a way of meeting and then interacting and inviting people, and then having large idols of Ganesha, which turned into a paper mache Utsav, and now it has become a big corporate industry by itself with a lot of sponsoring, where we get any different forms of Ganesha. So if you look at Ganesha, he is the Lord of Asia and he is across religions. So we see him first in a plaque from Luristan, Western Asia. This may be Ganesha or Ganesh-like forms, but this kind of structure has been there for ages. Next, we see a four-armed Ganesha in Afghanistan in 4th century. See the form and the structure standing. And Afghanistan Ganesha goddess. And this is from Java. See the stances, the structure, the way he sits, and some of the mudras are slightly different in terms of ornamentation, in terms of stance, and but the basic features are the same. So this way the same god, regional variations. He's a god with international presence with different forms, totally different forms. He's a Japan. So see the attire, the Japanese dress, Japanese thing, and then the Japanese, what is a radish or mulangi or something. And this is the Japanese form. In Japan, interestingly, Ganesha has 30 plus forms. And this is one. And they have Ganesha and Ganeshini also. And Mahavira Jain also has Ganesha concept. And this is taken from Usian Jodhpur temple. And his role is more like Kuvera, where he takes care of all the wealth and other things. And then with the trade connections, I think Ganesha was also observed in Jaina, where a lot of activities happen. This is a Buddha kind of an panel in Kandy Shuk Temple, Java, where the fusion of Mahabharata and Ganapati and then other things available in a blacksmith's panel, Keris blacksmith. So you can see Ganapati in the middle, and then Arjuna doing the blower on the left, and then Bhima doing the metal forging on the right. And Ganapati here is in a totally different free form, very, very comfortable, joyous, no bound, no dress, happy. So Ganapati is spread across all over Asia, and then in different forms in different things. This is whatever I'm showing is only a representative few examples, and it's very a vast subject to cover in detail. And Ganapati is also plastic, from paper image to plastic. It can be formed in many things, any design. The beauty is, if you want to see what is the latest trend in politics or the sun, see the Ganapati latest forms. He is always in tune with the latest trends. From the formless or the Sakala Niskala form, like this, he can be in a relaxed mode, enjoying an armchair, or he can be playing cricket. Interestingly, there is a temple in Chennai, somewhere in 2015 or 2000 something. They started a temple during the World Cup and other things to pray for the winning. And after that, it has been a consistent crowd puller. So where Ganapati is all prevalent batsman, this is a Dhoni form, and you can identify the players here as a wicket keeper, as a bowler, or a straight drive, cover drive, and then getting ready to bowl. All sorts of there. This is under regular puja. So this is total syncretism with cricket, and then so Ganapati is a sportsman, and he is in tune with latest developments. He is IT savvy. He checks his mails in a laptop, and then he gives blessings through email. And he is in tune with history, and then he can be Veera Shivaji or any of the popular roles. And then this is how after Tilak, Ganapati has made a very great transformation. And he can be like Rajini with all these things. Earlier, there was a movie called E about the housefly and the hero becoming a housefly. At the time, in one of the pandals, Ganapati was sort of a housefly. So wherever is the current popular theme, we can see that theme getting reflected in Ganapati Panthas during Ganapati Chaturthi. So it is a very interesting syncretistic tune, which is very specific to Ganapati. No other god has this kind of variety on that. So now COVID times, 2020 special. So he is attending to COVID patients with all this, with complete mask. Only problem is he has taken the mask, otherwise we won't know whether he is Ganapati or not. So Ganapati is the one who is in plastic. He adapts everywhere in tune with modern trends. So after praying to the all-prevalent God, Vigneshwara and Ganapati, so we are going into a little more detail into the final part of the presentation, sculptures and the factors influencing syncretism in culture. So we analyze based on the historical information and the efforts so far, how we have progressed across the last 2000 years and what all has been the factors which are impacting the changes in sculptures. So if you see this evolution, before going into the reasons, let us analyze how our worship mode has changed over the period of so many years. Earlier, man initially couldn't comprehend nature, and that was his primary worship, sun, moon, and other things, which he couldn't comprehend. It comes and goes. So there's a natural form of worship. The moment they found weapons, this all pervading. So who is become having the weapon, he becomes a king. Okay, and then these weapons are worshipped, and then there is one of the primary forms. Later on, the symbols of nature and God and other things started appearing in clay and easily manageable material, and they were the worshipping element. And then later on, it got started into wood, and then once he got skill in melting material, and then idols started appearing in metal, and then in composite material, ivory, and all other things. And then once they started developing construction technology using sand and mortar thing. So they were able to do bigger idols using composite materials. And the stone sculptures changed. So except metals, all these things are perishable. And many of the things we are either finding it due to excavations or very rare to find. But when it comes from the stone sculptures onwards, whatever has been done, we are able to see it almost 90% as it is, unless it has been intentionally damaged. So this is the path-breaking change. Later on, now with the usage of concrete, it becomes easy. Earlier, to sculpture a right hand, we need to have a lot of support. Now with the steel and other thing inside, in concrete, you can have 10 hands, 20 hands, 30 hands, no problem. But trying to do it in any of the other material, we have enough issues. Now, even concrete has become useless. Now we are doing worship digitally. During COVID times, temples are closed. So where do you worship? We worship in our laptop. And then even digital images have become useless. And then now we are going into laser holograms. So the progression from Indus Valley to Digital Valley. So we have laser hologram. So this is the progression we had taken. And this has changed the way we look at idols, sculptures, and how we visualize our gods using sculptures. So let us see the factors which impact the syncretism in sculptures. So when there is an expansion into new concept, new religions, during Vedic times, Rudra was a small god, and then doing protection, and he was relegated to a place. Gradually, he had more and more role, all pervading, and by 11th century, and, there are so many additional Puranas on deeds of Shiva vanquishing Vishnu avatars, and then Shiva doing this, and then religious integration. So the forms of Shiva from a simple Shivalinga, it has set into a grand thing. So one of the forms is the Mahasadasiva with the 25 heads. This is supposed to be one of the Adi forms. And then from there it is expanded to 64 plus and other varieties of Shiva. So this gives a mind map of various forms of Shiva classified by whether he is doing Anugraha, he is doing hunting, he is doing Antika, he is killing, or he is giving religious discourse, or he is dancing, or in the composite forms, or whether it is Avatara form, or it is a Sthiti form, Ligodbhava. So various forms, around 64 different activities. The iconography has expanded, adopted, and over a period of time into new dimensions. So this is one way affecting a deity which is accepting new forms, new roles. The other way is regional variations. Across the region, your attire, weapon, aspects, everything. These are the various structures of Ganapati across Southeast Asia. See the way, very casual, no dress at all, no, very simple to a fairly simple one, highly ornamented, and then dancing Shiva kind of one design, and then Japanese model. And there are so many varieties. It is only an example where we are able to give very simple peek into that. The next factor is absorbing new culture. A bachelor in a region becomes a family man, and they're two with two wives. Okay, that can happen even to gods. So a simple skanda described in a simple way in Khmer and other region become complex. In North India, he is a fertility god and he is a bachelor, and then he is normally not worshipped at a family level, and then usually in a remote place. Whereas in South, he is a full family man with the 6 heads, still to manage the 2 wives, and then still he is not able to do it, frequent fights. So with the 2 wives and complete iconography in a comfortable way. So the same god across region has got different views, different concepts, and adopted separately. This is a syncretism. The other factor is unification of sects into religion. There are many groups. The first we saw is that a same god or different roles leading to different gods or different icons. This is one way of expansion. Now this is a consolidation, where you have multiple gods and then we try to bring them together into a common form and a common worship. So one example is the Hindu Shanmata concept, where we had 6 separate gods and that thing. And over a period, everybody is fighting, trying to see that my God is the big one, and just trying to pacify and unify them. So it has given rise to a lot of composite gods or a family kind of panels where all the gods are present in one panel and worship together. So some of the examples are Ardhanarishvara, which is a combination of Shiva and Parvati, trying to say that both are equal, and the togetherness which gives the world the form in which it is currently. But again, the debate continues: who is left and who is right, and there is no end to it. So this is JKC Ardhanarishvara, beautiful Ardhanarishvara Shiva, Harihara. So trying to reconcile between Shaivas and Vaishnavas. So a concept of Harihara where the right is Shiva and the left is Vishnu. Fortunately, there is no major fight on who is right and who is left, and most of the icons are in this way only. The third design is a family group photo, which is a concept invented somewhere in 7th century Pallavas were great exponents. My colleague and mentor Gopi is going to have a detailed talk on this later on Pallavas. Somaskanda panel is an interesting panel where it unifies Shiva, Shakti, Skanda, three things, and then Vishnu and Brahma standing relegated to the background. So it is one way of representation of unification of religion. So when you unite sets of religions, it brings syncretism and new sets of ideas and designs. The other one is adoption of prevalent religious concepts, where you have a religion with a basic set, and then when the other religion is having 25, and then you have only 2 gods, you feel inferior and try to observe more gods. And then it says, I also have 10 gods, I also have 25. So that happens sometime, and then adoption of gods like in Jainism, in Buddhism. So the basic one in the Bhairava concept in Hindu has been for ages, and this is a depiction of a Bhairava, the form of Rudra or Shiva with the dog. The same got adopted also into Buddhism. Kala Bhairava in Nepal is a very popular worship in Tantra Buddhism. And there is also adopted in Jaina as an Akota Bhairava, and this is popular in Shvetambara Jain sect. So this is another way where your sculptures can change by adopting the same basic form and coming up with a different iconography in terms of weapons or in terms of structures, and then having your own version of God. The other factor is innovation in material. So depending on what material we had earlier, we saw the projection on how the way of worship has changed by the material available and the man's technological mastery over the material. So from a rigid and plastic material, from a very hard material to rigid material, the finer the amount of details, amount of jewelry, the more weapons get increased. We can see some examples. The first one is a Nataraja, which is in granite by Pallava in Siyamangalam. Even though we can say basic, but the beauty of a proportion, and I think is one of the excellent Natarajas. The first one in stone in Tamil Nadu. Then, when you look at Badami, Chalukya's son, the same Nataraja now has got more hands, more weapons, more ultimate form, beautiful dance, and they say that it is like a multi-exposure photo. And this is the work that is possible in sandstone and sometimes in redstone, which is a little lighter and then easier to manage. Then comes the ultimate soapstone. We can play like anything, almost like soap. And then the amount of detail and the amount of weapons and then the carving we can go no limit. So a lot of space behind the hands and other thing gaps can be easily done with much pressure, no pressure on breaking up. So it gives different ideas, different things, and it opens up the barrier with the new styles, new iconography for the same basic structure. Finally, size signifies greater. This has been there from ages. From ages, man has got the thinking, big is beautiful, big is great. So from ages, they've been trying to show their gods as big by giving big ideals, big things. But again, that is limited by the advantage of technology and other things. And this is a grand achievement, one of the tallest monolithic symbols of Gomateshwara, which was available from the 19th century itself. Now, with the technological advance and more material available, the latest tallest Shiva statue, 143 feet, made of concrete, steel, copper, zinc, and then the interesting part is it is on a slope of a mountain, like this. There is this is 142 feet, and there is a 100-feet foundation, and just to ensure that it doesn't slide due to landslides and other issues. So with the materials available, your concept of what we can do in sculpture changes. Now, again, expanding on the concept of big, tall, and wide, the Ganesha, which is who's like a frog, Pinkanet. I don't know whether it's a correct pronunciation. So this is how he is worshipped in Thailand. And we have some of the biggest statues of Ganesha in Thailand, near Pattaya. We are familiar with Pattaya for different reasons, but Pattaya is famous for spiritual salvation also. And this is one of the tallest Ganapatis available there. And this is the largest seated Ganapati, 160 feet. And largest reclining Ganapati, there is also there. All of them are nearby and around 1 hour drive from Pattaya. So next time when you visit Pattaya for other activities, do spend a day and have spiritual salvation visiting these temples. So this is how a concept of big, tall, and wide is possible now. And then there are, I'm sure every nation is in a competition to come up with the bigger. Next, sculpture as temples. So far, we have been saying God is in the heart. Now I have a representation of God as a sculpture. Now the sculpture is now becoming a temple. So examples coming up with advancement. Siddhivinayak Mandir in Gujarat. So the entire rock and other things have been made into a Ganapati, and the Ganapati himself is a temple. 120 feet of height, 80 feet width, and then the Ganesha is 56 feet, and it has got a modern sanctum as well as prayer hall inside. This is very near Ahmedabad. So next time, try this. The other concept is the popular beach resort in Murdeshwara. It has been the best religious tourism spot in India, where you get everything and also some gardens. So there is a second tallest Shiva statue, where you have 123 feet tall, metallic painting, glistering, and then it is totally hollow. This segment contains the Info Center Museum all by itself. So sculpture has been converted into a temple and a religious place. Now, the next thing is digital age and image. So earlier, we were worshipping sculptures. I will be finishing in another 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We are worshipping in temple. Now with the COVID and other things, the concept has changed. We are working from home. So what do? Pray from home. So e-puja, where you do for auspicious occasions, you see the Lord in your laptop screen, and you take the aarti and you take the puja, and you tinkle the bell, and then you do karpura harati. Everything you do it online, and that is a salvation. So there are concepts. You do puja online, and this is the next thing happening to sculptures. Your sculptures are no longer in stone; they are in electronic form. They are now sculptures are made out of electrons and protons. Now the syncretism in future. The interesting thing is that Vichitrachitta, the Pallava, Mahendra Pallava, in 7th century, he created a cave temple for the Trimurti, and he proudly proclaimed that I have created a temple without wood, mortar, and metal for Trimurti, which will withstand time. It is withstanding, and the concept of cave temples and structural temples in stone, which were created 1,000 years ago, are still standing. Now our guys have taken a step forward, modern Adivichitra Chitras. So they are creating sculptures even without even a stone or any solid material in digital electrons and protons. And then they have taken the next step in building laser holograms, 3D sculptures in 3D, where without anything you are able to project in air and give the sculptures, or have the basic sculpture, and then project embellishment and other forms and then decorations using lasers, so that the polymorphism, the same deity has got different decoration, different structures, depending on the time of the day or the festival. One example is Anjaneya statue, and then using digital lasers, they have changed the presentation, color, and then this is how your digital projection can change. And then you can use different visualization projections and alankaras and views. And this is how we can convey a lot of concepts using this. So this has changed the way where we were traditionally projecting sculptures to convey the God, his attributes, his characters, and there are different ways of doing it using different materials. Now, what is the future? So the objective of syncing primary, all the religions has been having the God, understand the God, and absorb the God in your own. So your God is inside you. So slowly we are going towards that. The next steps, what I foresee and then which is happening, is direct visualization of the sculptural images in your brain by electrodes and other things. You feel the God, you see the God, virtual reality, 3D, like your the science fiction movie Total Recall. You don't go into travel to Australia. You will give you a sensation that you are in Australia. So that is the next step where it is possible using syncretism. And this is all will lead towards internal realization to say that the God is inside me, which is ultimately the objective of all religions. So with this, I end a small, simple, not so deep, basic introduction on what is syncretism, what are the various religions, how the various religions have progressed from the last 2,500 years, and what are the factors impacting the changes in syncretism. Thank you very much. And thanks for doing it. I hope I finished it on time.
Thank you very much, Sri Shivashankar Babu, for the interesting lecture. We have got 2 questions in the chat box. We have time for that only. The one is from Nakishwar Rao. He was asking, Vishnu Purana gives, you said
Give me
that
a minute,
Vishnu Purana gives.
I'm
Okay,
not able to hear.
answer.
I'm just modifying.
Okay. Can you see the chat box?
Yeah.
So there are 2 questions in the chat box. You can answer that.
I'm just going through it. Yeah. From one of my guides, Nageshwara sir asking, Vishnu Purana gives salvation to Shiva. There are, I cannot directly give a source material now. Offhand, I have seen scholars mentioning that in some of the Vishnu Puranas, there is salvation available to Shiva as a counterbalance to this one during the Bhakti movement when there is competition between them. So I will check it up and give it to you offline later. What is the earliest sculptural evidence of Ganapati and from where? From Harappa period and before that, there has been forms of elephant-like sculptures. But whether that is Ganapati or whether it is an elephant god, it is a polymorphic representation, is left open. Again, it is subject to interpretation, and we can safely accept that around 1,000 we see some form of sense of pairing, but the stability of Ganapati comes very late, around 3rd BC, where we have some solid evidence and then structure on this. So the scholars here will be able to explain very more detail. That I am still a learner, and my job is to share whatever I have understood in a simple way.
Okay, thank you very much.